During World War II, millions of soldiers marched into battle carrying rifles, ammunition, and cigarettes. In fact, at certain points in the war, cigarettes were considered so essential that they were included in daily military rations, sometimes even prioritized alongside food. American soldiers alone were consuming billions of cigarettes per year, and in some units, running out of cigarettes could damage morale almost as much as running low on supplies. Governments didn't just allow this, they actively supported it. Tobacco companies partnered with the military, and cigarettes became a silent but powerful presence on the battlefield. But how did something so small become so important in one of the deadliest conflicts in human history? On the front lines, war was not just about combat, it was about enduring constant fear, exhaustion, and psychological pressure. Soldiers lived in trenches, forests, and ruined cities, often going days without proper rest, surrounded by uncertainty and death. In that environment, cigarettes became more than a habit. They became a moment of control in a world that had none. Lighting a cigarette meant pausing, even briefly, from the chaos. It meant routine in a place where nothing was predictable. Many soldiers described cigarettes as a way to calm their nerves before battle, to steady their hands, and to create a fragile sense of normality. In some cases, sharing a cigarette became a social ritual, a way to bond with others who understood the same fear. A simple exchange of tobacco could build trust, friendship, and solidarity in conditions where those things were rare and deeply needed. Military leadership quickly understood the psychological impact of this. Keeping soldiers mentally stable was just as important as keeping them physically equipped. Cigarettes were cheap, easy to distribute, and incredibly effective at maintaining morale. They were handed out as rewards, included in care packages, and even used as informal currency among troops. In prisoner of war camps, cigarettes often replaced money entirely, becoming a unit of value used to trade food, favors, and services. The presence of cigarettes created a structure within chaos, a small system of order in otherwise desperate conditions. What seems like a minor detail today was, at the time, a subtle but powerful tool of psychological management. Meanwhile, far from the battlefield, an entirely different story was unfolding. The war created an unprecedented boom for the tobacco industry. Production increased dramatically to meet military demand, and cigarettes became deeply tied to patriotism. Civilians were encouraged to send cigarettes to soldiers overseas, and campaigns reinforced the idea that supporting tobacco meant supporting the troops. For tobacco companies, this was a perfect opportunity, not just to profit during the war, but to create lifelong customers. Millions of young men who might never have smoked before were introduced to cigarettes under extreme conditions, forming habits that would follow them long after the war ended. The battlefield, in many ways, became the largest marketing campaign the tobacco industry had ever seen. What makes this story even more unsettling is that concerns about the health effects of smoking were not entirely unknown at the time. As early as the 1930s and 1940s, some researchers were already beginning to question the safety of tobacco, linking it to respiratory issues and other health problems. However, this information was not widely accepted or understood by the general public. At the same time, tobacco companies were actively promoting cigarettes as safe, sometimes even featuring doctors in advertisements to reinforce that image. Smoking was presented as normal, sophisticated, and even beneficial in reducing stress. The long-term consequences were largely ignored, overshadowed by the immediate demands of war and the powerful influence of marketing. In the end, cigarettes were far more than just a personal habit during World War II. They were a psychological tool, an economic driver, and a cultural symbol shaped by one of the most intense periods in human history. For soldiers, they offered brief moments of relief in a relentless environment of fear and uncertainty. For governments and industries, they represented control, profit, and influence. And for millions of people, they became part of daily life without a full understanding of the cost that would come later. It is one of those hidden stories where something seemingly small reveals a much larger truth about war, society, and human behavior. This is History You Missed.